Star Wars Explained for Dummies. Star Wars is one of those franchises that is known worldwide. It's pretty famous. Everyone has at least heard or seen Darth Vader, heard of Luke Skywalker, and probably seen the little frog guy that talks backwards. You also know that the fan base is full of those nerdy dudes that are really socially weird, so you're kind of repulsed by the idea of becoming a fan because you don't want to become one of those people. But you can't lie, you are a tad bit interested in the lore of Star Wars. I know you are. Space wizards are cool and you want to know the lore, but watching the endless content of Star Wars is a daunting task. But lucky for you, you don't really need to watch all 9 movies and all the live action shows and the 20 seasons of animated content or all the books to get a general understanding of what's happening with the space wizards. All you have to do is understand 6 essential things, and that is the movies, or what we call episodes of Star Wars 1 through 6. We will avoid the Disney nonsense for now that takes place a little later after the 6 movies, but for right now, let's just keep it to 6 movies. So if you know nothing about Star Wars and how the movies and shows came to be, like how did we get to what we have now? It's a lot, I understand, but I'm gonna break it down for you. Let's start off with the history of how Star Wars was made. So there was this guy, George Lucas, you've probably heard of him, or maybe you haven't. So he had a movie idea. The original film, it was just called Star Wars. There was no episode number attached to it. There was no name also attached to it. It was just Star Wars. So he made it, and people said he was crazy when it was coming out, but guess what? A lot of people turned out to like it, because at the time there was nothing else like Star Wars. Keep in mind this was the 70s, so he made it and people liked it, and then he made 2 more, also known as 5 and 6. So we are all clear that he made 3 original movies. We call them A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Those are the 3. And then about 2 decades later, George said, maybe we should make a backstory to those movies, because there was a lot that needed to be brought to the big screen. There was a lot of questions that were left unanswered in the first 3 movies. So then in the early 2000s, we got 3 more movies: The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. A key thing to note, if you talk to a nerdy Star Wars fan that has nothing better to do than make Star Wars videos, you will hear the movies referred to as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And you were probably thinking, duh, of course it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But remember the first ones that came out in the 70s and 80s that we talked about, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi? Well, we call those 4, 5, and 6. Also called the original trilogy. So 4, 5, and 6, the first 3 that ever came out, are called the original trilogy. And then the ones in the early 2000s that he made after those, we call those 1, 2, and 3, also known as the prequels. It's a little confusing for some people, but I hope you get the point. Okay, let's move on to the nerdy Star Wars lore that you're here for, because you don't want to watch 6 movies, that's too much, and you don't want your friends to think you're a weird Star Wars fan. So the way we're going to break this down, we're going to do it in chronological order, 1 to 6. There is debate on how we watch these movies. Should it be in chronological order or release order? There are pros and cons to both, but that's a massive nerdy Star Wars debate, so I will save that for another video. We're going to go Phantom Menace and then on chronological order. So Phantom Menace episode 1. So we start off with 2 Jedi, aka the good space wizards. You've probably heard of the Jedi, Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi. They are sent to settle what sounds like the least exciting thing ever. They go to settle a trade dispute. Yeah, I know that's exactly what you wanted to hear me say, but stay with me. So they go to settle this dispute with the Trade Federation, aka a shady group of greedy merchants that have started a blockade on this planet called Naboo because of a tax disagreement. Boring on the surface and a lot of details right there, but you gotta stay with me. So here's where the space wizards come in. The Trade Federation, the bad guys, are working secretly with a mysterious bad space wizard. We will refer to the bad space wizards as Sith Lords. So the Sith Lord's name is Darth Sidious. The Trade Federation doesn't negotiate. They invade the planet of Naboo with a droid robot army. The Jedi escape along the way. They pick up the galaxy's most controversial character called Jar Jar Binks. A bunch of Star Wars fans hate Jar Jar Binks, but he is part of the squad now. Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jar Jar Binks, they team up with Queen Padme Amidala of Naboo. She is trying to save her people and expose the invasion to the Republic, but after they leave Naboo, they have crash landed on a desert planet called Tatooine, where they free this little boy named Anakin Skywalker. Remember that name. So Qui-Gon believes that Anakin Skywalker basically is Space Jesus and will save the whole galaxy from evil, because the Jedi have this prophecy of someone that is referred to as the Chosen One. So all the good guys go back to the ship that they have suddenly repaired, but then a bad space wizard shows up and attacks Qui-Gon Jinn. They battle, but Qui-Gon Jinn escapes. They head to Coruscant, the capital of the Space Republic, and we will get our first look into how broken galactic politics are. The Senate in the Galactic Republic is full of corruption. Everyone argues forever and nothing ever gets done. But here's a key part that you need to understand. There's a little known senator named Palpatine of Naboo who is secretly Darth Sidious in disguise. He uses the crisis to get himself elected as Supreme Chancellor, and this is the first domino in his master plan to take over the galaxy. But you want to hear more about the good wizards versus the bad wizards fighting. We will get to that soon. So the good guys return to Naboo and launch a four-way battle. Padme has a team that consists of 2 Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon. They go to fight some bad guys in a space battle right above the planet of Naboo. And at the same time, the Gungans, Jar Jar Binks' race who live on Naboo, fight the droid army on the planet in a massive CGI battle. And then we have Anakin, the little kid. He accidentally hops into a starfighter and blows up the droid control ship and then saving everyone. But in the middle of all this battling, Darth Maul shows up, the guy from before on the desert planet. He is Sidious's apprentice. Remember, the Sith Lord who is also the politician. So Darth Maul fights Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon unfortunately dies, and then Obi-Wan beats Darth Maul. But remember, Qui-Gon found Anakin Skywalker, the Space Jesus kid that he thinks is the chosen one. So Qui-Gon wanted to train Anakin, but the little green frog and the other top Jedi say no because they have a bad feeling about him. But Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan right before he dies to train Anakin. Then Obi-Wan's like, okay, and then he goes up to the green frog, asks if he can train him. The green frog kind of contemplates it, and then ultimately the green frog lets Obi-Wan train Anakin. So episode 1 ends with Palpatine gained more political power, which is crucial to understand. The Jedi realizing the bad guys are back after they thought they were extinct. So yeah, that's the Phantom Menace, and I know that was a lot of info, but it will all fall into place and become much easier to understand as we go on. Now we get into movie 2 or episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So we pick up about 10 years later. Little Anakin Skywalker, the so-called Space Jesus kid from the last movie, is now a moody teenager with raging hormones, training as a Jedi under Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Jedi thought it was risky to train him, and turns out they were right. He's powerful, like really powerful, but he's impatient and he's emotional, and he's starting to catch feelings for the Queen Padme Amidala, which is kind of weird because he was just a kid in the last movie and she was like a well-established older teenage politician. And let's just say that Padme has this man on a leash.
I will do anything that you ask.
It's Riz, I guess. But anyways, this is a big no-no for the Jedi because they're not allowed to love. It leads to attachment and blah blah blah. Now here's the setup. Someone tries to assassinate Queen Amidala, Padme, so the Jedi assign Anakin Skywalker to protect her, while Obi-Wan goes to find the assassin. So Padme and Anakin are all falling in love somewhere in secret, and he's whining a lot about sand.
I don't like sand.
They have this really awkward hour to an hour and a half in the movie where they kiss. Padme regrets the kiss, then Anakin wants more kisses, but Padme's like, no. But Obi-Wan goes in like full detective mode. He follows the assassination trail and discovers something massive. A hidden planet where the entire clone army has secretly been built. Supposedly for the Republic, ordered years ago by the Jedi, but the Jedi that ordered it is already dead somehow. So there's a lot of mystery around the clones. So the clones are based on the DNA of a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. Obi-Wan fights Jango on a rainy platform in one of the coolest non-lightsaber duels in the series, then tracks him down to the planet of Geonosis, where a shady separatist movement is forming, but unfortunately Obi-Wan gets captured by the bad guys on the planet of Geonosis. Also at the same time, Anakin gets visions that his mom is about to die, so he goes to get his mom. He finds her in the village with these people called the Tusken Raiders. So basically, the Tusken Raiders stole his mom, tortured her, and then she dies in Anakin's arms. And spoiler alert, Anakin absolutely slaughters the entire village. Meanwhile, the political side heats up. I know your favorite part. Chancellor Palpatine, remember the secret Darth Sidious Sith Lord, uses the crisis to grab emergency powers. This is huge because it lets him officially deploy the clone army, which he just so happens to control now. Smooth move by the Chancellor. Back to Anakin and Padme. Anakin and Padme rush to save Obi-Wan Kenobi, but they all three get captured by Count Dooku, a former Jedi turned Sith Lord working for Darth Sidious. He's charismatic, old, and dangerous. He's kind of like your grandpa if your grandpa could electrocute you with his hands, and also has a red lightsaber. And also Padme and Anakin kiss again after Padme said she wanted no more kisses. Just when things look really bad, the Jedi show up for a massive rescue mission in a giant arena fight against droids and Count Dooku. And then here's the real highlight. Yoda enters the chat for the first time ever. The little green frog busts out his lightsaber and goes full ninja mode on Count Dooku. He's flipping and spinning. He's basically like Sonic the Hedgehog with a laser sword. It's pretty legendary, I can't lie. Dooku still escapes, but the Clone Wars have officially begun. The The droids versus the clones, separatists versus the Republic. It's all out civil war at this point. And oh, I almost forgot, Padme and Anakin secretly get married. So episode 2 ends with Anakin and Padme secretly married, breaking the Jedi rules. The Republic now has a clone army and is at war. Palpatine is gaining even more political power, and the Jedi, who are supposed to be peacekeepers, are now leading armies against the separatists in an all-out civil war. Okay, now that was the end of Attack of the Clones. Let's move on to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. This is personally my favorite movie in all the Star Wars saga, so get ready. This is where everything goes down. We open with one of the coolest space battles in Star Wars. Obi-Wan and Anakin are now full-on war heroes flying around blasting droids like it's a video game. They fight their way onto a separatist ship. They rescue Chancellor Palpatine, who has been kidnapped by Count Dooku. And spoiler alert, it's all staged because Palpatine basically sets up his own kidnapping to have Anakin kill Count Dooku. And Palpatine and Count Dooku are secretly together, Darth Sidious and Count Dooku. This is the first real sign that Palpatine is secretly grooming Anakin towards the dark side, because he makes Anakin give into his anger and his hate, and he kills Count Dooku when Dooku is defenseless. And this is bad because the Jedi are not supposed to kill people that are unarmed. Meanwhile, the Clone Wars are raging across the galaxy, and the Jedi are getting kind of suspicious, like there's something off. But they're also distracted because, well, they're generals in a galactic war that they were never meant to lead. I also forgot to mention that Anakin comes back from the war, and Padme tells him that she is pregnant. Now here's the game changer. Anakin keeps having visions of Padme dying in childbirth, just like his mother. Palpatine slides into the ultimate manipulative friend and says, hey, the dark side can teach you powers that could save Padme's life. And boom, that's how he reels Anakin in. While all that is happening, Palpatine plays his political game. The Senate grants him more emergency powers, and at this point, he's basically a dictator. When Anakin finally realizes Palpatine is Darth Sidious, he tells Mace Windu because he's a Sith Lord. So Mace Windu and some of the other Jedi Masters go to confront Palpatine. Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, kills a few of the Jedi, and then it's purple lightsaber dude versus the old politician that is secretly the most powerful being in the galaxy, and then Windu defeats Sidious into submission. Anakin shows up and looks at Mace Windu, looks at Palpatine, and says, nah, I have to save my wife. He cuts his co-worker's hand off. Palpatine fries Mace Windu, throws him out the window, and Sidious stands up and asks Anakin if he wants to be a bad guy, and Anakin's like, sure. Then Sidious says, your new name is Darth Vader. From there, it's all downhill. Palpatine gives the famous line, execute Order 66, where the clones basically betray the Jedi and wipe them all out from the galaxy. Anakin, now Vader, marches to the Jedi Temple, slaughters everyone, even the younglings. Meanwhile, Yoda and Obi-Wan barely survive their clone betrayals. Sidious also tells Anakin, now Vader, to go kill the Trade Federation bad guys on this lava planet called Mustafar. The movie ends with the best fight in Star Wars, Obi-Wan versus Anakin. It's debatable though across the Star Wars fandom, so yeah, Obi-Wan versus Anakin on the lava planet Mustafar. It's a long battle, some epic moments, and at the end, Obi-Wan is at the top of a hill, Anakin is at the bottom. Anakin jumps, Obi-Wan wins by slicing Anakin to pieces and leaving him to burn alive on Mustafar. Palpatine scoops him up, rebuilds him into a black-suited cyborg, you know, Darth Vader. Meanwhile, the little green frog fights the wrinkly guy. The wrinkly guy wins. Padme dies giving birth to Luke and Leia. Yoda goes to exile after failing to kill the wrinkly guy. The wrinkly guy crowns himself as Emperor. The Republic is now dead, and the Empire is born. Episode 3 ends with Anakin becoming Darth Vader. Padme's dead, but her children are hidden away now. The Jedi almost completely wiped out. Palpatine is now Emperor of the galaxy. Basically, the bad guys win. So now we move on to Episode 4, the first movie of Star Wars that ever came out. So here we go. It's about 20 years after Anakin had his lava bath on Mustafar. The galaxy is now ruled by the Empire. The Jedi are basically extinct. Darth Vader is Palpatine's right-hand man, cruising around as the ultimate space enforcer. Things are looking pretty rough in the Star Wars galaxy at this point. But then we meet our new main character, Luke Skywalker, a whiny farm boy stuck on a desert planet called Tatooine. Remember the desert planet from earlier? All Luke wants to do is get off this farm and do something exciting. Basically the space version of I hate my hometown and I want to go to college. Here's the setup. The rebels, the good guys, fighting the Empire, steal the plans to the Death Star, which is the Empire's brand new moon-sized space station with the power to blow up entire planets. Princess Leia, Darth Vader's daughter, hides the stolen plans inside a droid named R2-D2, you've probably heard of him, who's along with his buddy C-3PO, and they end up on the desert planet Tatooine. The droid stumbles into Luke Skywalker's life, dragging him straight into galactic conflict. Luke meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, who has been hiding out as a desert hermit since the Jedi Purge. Obi-Wan then tells Luke that his dad was a Jedi. He gives Luke his father's lightsaber and basically says it's time to learn about the Force. He also casually forgets to mention that Darth Vader is Luke's dad, but we'll save that for later. The gang teams up up with Han Solo, a smuggler, the ultimate space cool guy, and the co-pilot Chewbacca. You've probably heard of him too. They all set out to deliver the Death Star plans to the Rebel Alliance. Along the way, Obi-Wan faces off with Darth Vader in a major rematch. Spoiler alert, Obi-Wan lets Vader strike him down so Luke and others can escape. Climax of this movie is the famous Death Star trench run. Luke hops in an X-Wing spaceship, flies through enemy fire, and with some help with Han Solo and a little Force Ghost encouragement from Obi-Wan Kenobi, he lands the perfect shot to blow up the Death Star. The Rebels win a huge victory, and Luke officially steps into his role as the hero. So episode 4 ends with Luke beginning his Jedi journey, Darth Vader realizing that the random farm kid is going to be a major problem. The Rebels prove that they can fight back against the Empire, and then the galaxy realizing maybe there's actually a new hope. You get what I did there? Next, we move on to episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So the Rebels are feeling good after blowing up the Death Star. They basically rage baited the entire Empire. We open on the icy planet Hoth, where the Rebels have set up a new base. Vader shows up with giant walking tanks called AT-ATs. The Empire absolutely wrecks the place, forcing the Rebels to scatter. Han Solo and Leia escape together. They start building this romantic tension, but Luke kissed Leia before this, and so that's kind of weird because that's his sister.
He kissed his sister!
Anyways, Luke heads off to train with legendary Jedi Master Yoda. Yes, the little green frog that talks backwards. Luke's training with the little green frog is a struggle. Yoda teaches him about the Force, patience, and not being a whiny brat like his dad, but Luke keeps getting visions that his friends are in danger, so against Yoda's advice, he ditches the training early to go play the hero. Meanwhile, Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO are constantly on the run from Darth Vader. They end up on this place called Cloud City, run by Han's old buddy, Lando Calrissian, but surprise, Lando betrays them at first and hands them over to Darth Vader. And this is where Vader drops his big plan. He's going to freeze Han Solo like an ice cube. Han gets turned into a popsicle and shipped off to an evil slime lord called Jabba the Hutt. Then comes the big showdown, Luke versus Vader. One of the most iconic lightsaber fights ever. Vader toys with him basically the entire time because Luke is way out of his league. Finally, Vader corners him, chops off his hand, and drops one of the most famous lines in Star Wars history that you have probably heard before.
No, I am your father.
Then Luke's like, no, and then Luke dips, and that's basically how it ends. So at the end, Han Solo is frozen and taken away. Luke is missing a hand and is in total shock about the evil space lord being his dad. The Rebels are on the run, and Vader and the Empire basically have won. It's called Empire Strikes Back for a reason. Now we move on to episode 6, Return of the Jedi. So we left off with Han Solo frozen like a human popsicle, shipped off to a slug gangster named Jabba the Hutt. This movie kicks off with the squad running a rescue mission. Things get kind of messy. Leia strangles Jabba with a chain, Luke fights a giant monster, and then the gang escapes in a huge desert battle where this guy named Boba Fett is yeeted into the pit. Now onto the bigger picture of what's happening. The Empire is building a new Death Star, another planet-killing spaceship, but this time it's even bigger and deadlier. The Emperor himself shows up in person to oversee it, which means the stakes are pretty high. And then the Rebels cook up a plan. There's going to be a ground team, Han, Leia, Chewie, Luke, and the droids. They go to the forest moon of Endor to disable the Death Star shield generator. There's going to be a space fleet that prepares for an all-out battle in space. Luke goes to confront Vader and Palpatine directly because he thinks that there's still good left in the evil space lord. On Endor, the whole gang runs into these little teddy bears called the Ewoks. At first, it's kind of a joke, but then they end up helping the Rebels in a surprisingly effective way. So yep, the space teddy bears take down the stormtroopers. Kind of crazy. Meanwhile, Luke surrenders to Vader, gets taken to the Emperor. Palpatine tries to push Luke into turning to the dark side. He makes him fight Vader and then almost succeeds. But when Luke finally beats Vader in their duel, he realizes that he's becoming just like his evil space lord dad. Luke throws away his saber. He's like, nah, I'm a Jedi like my dad back in the day. Basically rage baits Sidious. The Emperor flips out, blasts Luke with some force lightning, literally frying the dude alive. But then we get the huge redemption arc. Vader becomes the chosen one. Vader finally chooses his son over his master, picks up Palpatine, throws him down the reactor shaft, killing him. But in the process, Vader is wounded pretty bad. The Death Star blows up, the Rebels win, the Ewoks party, and Anakin Skywalker dies redeemed, finally bring balance to the Force like Qui-Gon wanted him to. So episode 6 ends with Han Solo being back with the crew. Luke saved his father. Darth Vader is redeemed, but now he's dead. Unfortunate. The Emperor is defeated. The Rebels overthrow the Empire, celebrating with the teddy bears in space. Basically, the good guys finally win. So yeah, that's Star Wars in the quickest way that I could put it. And like I said earlier, that is 1 through 6. There are much more after that, although most fans don't count those, but that's a conversation for another time. That was a lot. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button. And if you really like the video, make sure you subscribe. Like, do it.
Do it.